I'm standing there trying to do the show, and just one point, a dinosaur just walks past. And so the kid's like, oh, look at that. I'm just like, okay, so now there's a dinosaur in my show. All right. So then that happened. And then 5 minutes later, some stormtroopers came and just sat right near the stage. I'm like, all right. And then I had a kid volunteering on stage with me. And then Spider-Man, a guy dressed as Spider-Man, literally just walked up to the stage and started high-fiving the kid.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to One Story Building, where it is a hot Australian day. So many fans are on, but hopefully that won't interfere with whatever it is that I'm going to say. Today's guest is actor, kids entertainer, and someone who I will definitely be having at least a PG-13 conversation with. So just please bear that in mind. It is Mark Trenwith. Welcome to One Story Building.
Hey, how you going?
I wanted to speak to you specifically, because of the character that you have created, Mr. Snotbottom. Because I speak to a lot of actors, and it isn't really that difficult for someone to become an actor. I did it, but not everyone chooses to specialize in the way that they perform. So for an actor, for you as an actor, with a demo reel that has swearing in it, uh, clips of you being a comedian where you make jokes that aren't for kids. Why did you decide to create shows for children?
I guess they just happened to be the first few jobs that I got out of uni. So I studied film and, performance. And the very first few gigs that came up were in like touring children's theatre companies and stuff like that. And then a small like role in a children's TV like ABC show. And it just, I don't know, like kind of just stuck, or I just saw that it was an option. And I guess over time, I just became slowly a bit more specialized in it. So it was no sort of decision or path that I outright chose to begin with. It was just sort of saying yes to the opportunities that were coming at the time. And then sort of through that, which a lot of actors tend to do in Australia, is a role came up for, like Captain Starlight. Um, and so I took that, and then, like 13 years later, I was still doing it, and, kind of learning or just establishing a repertoire with kids and and I was sort of finding that I was addicted to their responses to things. You know what I mean? Like, sort of when you make a joke to a kid, their laugh level is about 10 times more than an adult's. Like, it's so true with, Monsters Inc. when they're just like trying to bottle, the kids' laughs, it's like I feel like that is so true. Like that is real. Like their laughs just could light up an entire city. Like it so once you've the recipient of that, it's becomes like a drug. It becomes an addiction. And because I was doing stand up at the time as well, I was just getting so present to the fact that, yeah, making adults laugh was fun, but like making a kid laugh was just like epic, it was just full throttle. And I just kept chasing that. And then this friend of mine asked me if I could do something at their kid's birthday party. I'd never done anything like that before. And she was asking me not because she even knew that I had a children's theatre background. She just knew that I had a stand-up background. So she just expected me to do stand-up to these kids. And I was like, well, I'll do Captain Starlight. I know all these magic tricks. I can do some balloon animals. Sure, I can throw something together. And she told me, he's like, all right, great. He wants you to make some fart jokes. I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. And then about 5 minutes before the party, sorry, like about a day before the party, she's gone, oh, he's told everyone at school that you're coming to make fart jokes. I was like, oh man, okay, this kid's serious. So I had to like rewrite everything and just was like, all right, what's the stupidest character name I can think of? And I was like, probably Mr. Snotbottom would have to be the stupidest name I can think of. And so it just went from there. So I did this Mr. Snotbottom character at this kid's party, and it worked well, and it all had a real stinky undertone. I was like, okay, this might have some legs, and so I started sort of developing seasons and presenting it at festivals, and it just sort of snowballed, I guess.
Such humble beginnings. It's good to hear the origin story. You mentioned Captain Starlight. I applied myself. I auditioned for Captain Starlight years and
All
years
right.
ago, and I think if memory serves, I think I was offered a role, but I had to
Yeah.
regrettably turn it down because I was just too busy with studies and other things. And I always think, how would my life be different if I, for any amount of time, was a Captain Starlight person? So just for my own sake, f figuring out what I missed out on, what was it like being? What is Captain Starlight to for starters?
So I guess the it's your role is to sort of go around to children's hospitals and distract the kids from whatever's going on, from their procedures. It could be just something really simple. They might just be in a waiting room to check what their sniffles are, or they might have a broken leg, or somewhere something more serious where they might be there long term. And you're kind of in that case, you are building quite a relationship with some of those kids if they're there for sometimes several years, or particularly if they've got cystic fibrosis, they might be coming in several times a year for most of their life. So, yeah, so your kind of role is there to, I guess there's two facets. So there is like a kind of a room that they can come to, and you're there, and you've got video games and arts and crafts, and you're there sort of almost facilitating. And then there's the other side, which is a lot more clowny, which is a lot more performance based, where you're going and actual visiting the rooms themselves where they might have never heard of you. They don't really know why they're there themselves, and you're just kind of coming in there and try and brighten the room a bit, and make that hospital experience a little bit more normalized for them. Um, and particularly if they've got procedures or something coming up, it's about kind of making them less stressed, or particularly you might be damage control. You might be coming in after a procedure that they've just done, and so you're coming in, with some magic tricks, like comedy, some music. So there's different types, of captains, I suppose. Everyone brings a different skill set and different personality to their version of doing it. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. You've got a great team around you. You've got so much support in terms of helping you navigate what dealing with sick children might be like. So you've got a lot of like mental health support around that. And it was, yeah, amazing. An amazing time. It was, I mean, I only thought I'd be doing it for a couple of years, but then 13 years later, I just couldn't say goodbye to it. And there's a lot of flexibility in that role actually as well for, particularly for performance artists who, you know, like you say, you might have been busy with study, or you might be going on away on a tour or something like that. They let you have that sort of like month off or so to go and do your thing, because they consider that you bringing your skill sets that you're learning in the greater world is of benefit to them and is a benefit to the kids. So yeah, they're very flexibility with performers and actors and artists. So yeah, it was a great time.
I remember when I was in primary school, a recurring performer that showed up to assembly was the world famous Captain Cleanup. He would arrive in this sleek yellow car and tell us all about how to put rubbish in the bin. Was there when you were in school, was there ever a person like who you are now who would come to school and do performance that may have inspired you to get into acting in general?
I don't know if any of them like actually inspired me to do it, but I just adored people that were coming to visit our school. Like it was just so otherworldly. And as a kid you believe it. You know what I mean? Like you probably believed he was an actual dude that spent his entire day with rubbish bins. Do you know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
you like suspension of belief is like so different when you're a kid. So I've just always been like in love with that sort of stuff. Like anyone, even if it was like some creepy as fuck clown, I didn't care. Like I loved any performer that was coming to visit the school or in any area. But I think, like I really wanted to be an animator as a kid. So I loved like Disney cartoons and any animation I just adored. But at the time, there was nowhere, when I was finishing high school, there was nowhere really to study it yet. So the 3D, digital animation revolution hadn't really taken off yet. Like Toy Story 1 had only just come out. Um, so I was recommended to go into film and then, maybe find an avenue from there. And then as I started kind of picking up, performance electives as well as the film degree, I realized that, maybe what I didn't want to be was an animator. Maybe I actually wanted to be a human cartoon character. And so I think that's what I've sort of been following and developing, I guess. But yeah, I think in some ways, I think I've always been just open to whatever was going to happen, or, like I never tried to say I want to be this thing from a performance or artist point of view. And I've just tried to listen to the opportunities that are around me and just listen to sort of what my body wants and, what my soul's reaching out for at the time, which is hence why, with the new show I'm making at the moment is a little bit away from what I've been doing the last 15 years. I've been really sort of focusing on this sort of like under eight, 4 to 8 year old sort of niche. And now I just kind of like, I think I run out of things to say there. And but I almost quit. And instead of quitting, I just went, well, I don't know. What do I just want to do? What do I just want to say? If no one was going to read what I'm about to write, what would I write? And I just been coming up with this sort of newer material for kind of an 8+ sort of age group. So I don't know what it's going to do. I don't know how long I'll do that for, but it's just, yeah, it's about just trying to listen to what my soul's telling me at the time, I think.
Yeah. When I was studying acting back in the day, I always just assumed that whenever I was going to make a product, it would always be for an audience that was around about the same age as me. Like for most stand-up comedians, they look like their audience, but you don't look like your Snotbottom audience most of the time. So after doing it, I started to get into kids entertaining just sort of for its own sake. But when you decided to create your Snotbottom character, what motivated you to make a show for kids specifically beyond this is what you were doing early on in your acting life, and then you just sort of followed through with it? Like what made it stand out beyond you starting off doing kids entertaining as just a way of accessing work as an actor?
Mm. Well, I guess, as I say, their reactions were just so visceral. You know what I mean? Like when I mean, and I think, being interested in animation and cartoons and things like that and never really letting it go. Like, I mean, this is what I'm wearing right now. It's like, this is
I
like pretty normal for me.
mm,
So, and so I guess being a kid adjacent, is something that's always been there. Um, yeah, so I guess, it just felt very natural to me, I suppose, and just that sort of, yeah, it's those things like that suspension of belief that uh, just honest, visceral reactions that kids have. I just feel very drawn to, and just this sort of, the fantastical, well, the love of the fantastical is just, it's just like you can be anything to them and they'll accept it and take it on board and look at you at face value. And, sometimes an adult audience, they're not always going to give you 100%, like they'll always bring with them some baggage that might be
mm,
with them that day. And kids will as well, of course, but they can be flipped a lot easier. They can come into your world with a lot more ease. So it was just, yeah, like, hearing a whole room full of kids laugh and just be affected is just like, it's just like nothing like it. It's just, yeah, it really goes deep into you. And I think that's why I kept wanting to do it and saw that this was something that I was interested in. And perhaps, like, to be honest, I probably, although I was okay at stand up, like I maybe wasn't excelling, you know what I mean? So And I felt like myself be a lot more alive and a lot more suited to Mr. Snotbottom. And I just felt like I was doing a better job of it.
Mhm.
And I tried to do stand up at the same time still, but it got to a point where it was too hard to balance the two. Because, like the kids show would be at 11 or, earlier in the morning, and then an adult show might be 11 at night. And that was just impossible to try and um, manage. So it got to a point where I had to sort of choose a lane, and it it just felt like a no-brainer because it was just, yeah, it was just, I think, making me happier.
As much as people think that kids are easily distracted, especially nowadays when there's phones all over the place, you're probably going to get a more honest reaction from kids because they're at that age where they're still trying to create what will become their nostalgia. Whereas if you did a Snotbottom show for adults, it's not that they necessarily wouldn't like the show, but they've, as you said, they carry baggage with them into the audience. They might be thinking about like chores they have to do and other things. But with kids, they don't really have that much of a life before that day to reminisce about. So they give you the full attention. So you get more of like an honest reaction from them.
Yeah, exactly. And they might not be as judgmental as, like they're not going to sit there and go, he's not as good as Peter Coombe, is he? Like, you know what I mean? They're not like going to, they're not going to
Would
judge you
would
for
kids nowadays reference Peter Coombe? I would, but
probably.
like, would a 6-year-old even know who? I mean, no, Peter Coombe's great. No offense to Peter Coombe, but would a 6-year-old even know who Peter Coombe is? Toffee Apple Man.
He's still, he still like performs at all the festivals. Like he
Hmm.
still does like, yeah, like I've seen him on the like in Perth Fringe World like
Hmm.
numerous times, So he still throws his hat out there, and I think he still visits schools and things like that.
Hmm.
I know like my niece and nephew referenced spaghetti bolognese when I was there over Christmas, so he's still, yeah.
Okay, well, good.
But yeah, definitely not in the realm of say Emma Wiggle. Do you know what I mean? I'm sure, like, yeah, not as many
Oh
people.
yeah, my niece, her favorite person is the yellow wiggle now because they've changed like 5 times over. But yeah, the current girl yellow wiggle, it's like
Yeah,
her favorite thing. I saw a part of your Snotbottom show where you talked about how snot is made. You're like, there's fat, there's salt, and then there's water, and it all
oh,
comes
yeah.
together, and then it makes snot. And there's behind you, there's like salt and fat on sticks doing like a little dance behind you as part of the puppet show. And then you say, and then the whole process takes a really long time, so we won't be seeing any snot today. Blah 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 blah. And then you walk like off to the side to sort of do do another sketch, and then this big snot monster comes out and has eyes, and it makes like a blur sound, and the kids respond to it, and they're like, "Look behind you," and it reminded me of a trick that I do with kids where I have a wand, but it's made out of a very tightly coiled metal spring. So I hold it up and I'm like, here's a wand. It's a really good wand. It's really strong. It doesn't bend. And then I like look away to say something and I move my hand slightly and it like sways back and forth. And I found, and the kids, they respond in the same way by saying, look at your wand. I look and then I stop the wand and it goes back to normal again. And that it's just, I can milk that for like 7 minutes. I found that a big difference between stage shows for adults and for kids is that with kids shows, the skits usually, comparatively, involve things going wrong. Like the wand breaks, you don't notice the snot monster thing. So I have my own theory as to why that might be the case. But do you have your own theory as to why in kids shows the performers make mistakes?
Well, I guess it's somewhat of a power balance. They love the idea of not of knowing more than you. You know what I mean? Like, because it even extends to sort of just getting anything wrong. Like, yeah, as you say, mistakes, not necessarily always physical ones. This is just like, oh, did you bring your cat along? no, that's not my cat. That's my dad. Like they go crazy at that sort of stuff. They just love correcting you. And I think it's, maybe it is a part of them getting a bit of power.
Mm,
And just even just the absurdity of seeing an adult who is normally the one telling them what to do, leading by example, bossing them around. It's that complete clash of context shift. And so that is just so absurd to them. It's just so to see that in front of them, I think, yeah, it hits that button of like, this is not what happens in the real world, so that, and they just sort of, yeah, as you experience, respond accordingly. What do you think?
Oh, I mean, I had a bit of a speech here explaining my theory, but it is that it's like it brings the performer down to the kids' level, and it's the but because the kids are able to chime in, it involves them more in the show. But yeah, a power balance. That's a perfect way of putting it.
Yeah, to the point where in the early days I sort of, and still do sometimes, like just would make the error of letting their power grow too much.
Mhm.
So like at heart, Mr. Snotbottom's a buffoon,
Mhm.
but he was just too much of an idiot. So they would just be like, well, this guy's free game. Yeah. And then they would take over the show and
Mhm.
I'd lose all respect in their eyes.
Mhm.
Um, and so yeah, I had to really like learn how to be silly without relinquishing control,
Mhm.
and some of that was probably just from keeping an authoritative, not necessarily authoritative, but maybe like dynamic, I should say, like presence and not trying to be too low status. Like you can still be silly and still be a little bit high status. But even like now, sometimes like I don't know if you find this, but it's such a like tightrope. Like I can kind of push to a certain degree with the crowd. Like I can kind of, but if I make a silly face that second too long, that could be make or break. Do you know what I mean? Like I've gone too far. I've let them too much into like the fray, and then I have to like swim back to shore. Do you know what I mean? I have to
Mhm.
sort of like pull back, and there are definitely crowds where I go, "Ah, man, I can't be as funny today." I
Mhm.
can't be silly. I have to actually be a little bit more restrained because they're too crazy. Like
Mhm.
they're gonna go off if I let them, yeah. And it's just sometimes about just not letting the laugh go as long, like having to cut off their laughter faster. Um, or even just not let some laughs in, just keep the show rolling. And it's always a shame when I have to do that, but sometimes you've got to, like, because they want to be involved too much.
Do
I've
you
had
have?
kids just jump on the stage
Oh yeah, I was
and
going
just
to ask.
do it.
Do do you have any examples where a kid jumped on stage, or even you were just working with them as an audience participation person, and I guess they may have noticed that you were being too foolish, and they got too high and mighty, and you essentially had to revert back to being the grown up just to get them to calm down. Does that happen often?
Yeah, yeah, like not as much anymore, but yeah, it happens a lot, especially during after COVID, that year after COVID, because in Melbourne and Sydney there were more lockdowns, and so kids essentially lost a year of development,
Mm,
and so or even to a point, couple of years, especially when like maybe school started to go back, but certainly larger scale social interaction hadn't gone back. So those kids were nuts. Like they just so it's almost like the 7-year-olds were behaving like 5-year-olds, and the 5-year-olds were kind of almost behaving like 3-year-olds. Like it just so I was having to just sort of like all I felt like all I was doing was just managing. Like I wasn't performing anymore. I was just behavioral managing. And it just, I all was like, had to even reach out to other performers and go, is it just me, or is this really hard right now? And a lot of other performers and facilitators and stuff that I talked to were like, yeah, this is a wild time. Um, but I've seldom had to actually like break character though. Like often, often someone helpful in the room will, stand like stop anything too crazy going on. But also the nature of the character in the show, luckily, is that he is a bit more malleable. Do you know what I mean? So when chaos happens, it sort of helps the show, or it's in the wheelhouse of the character and the show, so it doesn't become too distracting. Like for example, this was nuts. Like I quite often I've been situations where I'm just like, this feels more like a dream than an actual performance, where I was doing like a charity performance in a much larger sort of like a convention center style scenario, where it was like a Christmas party for charity. And so there's all these things going on. There's like, activities to do, rides, like characters walking around, like displays, interactive things. And then there was the performance stage, but it was just in the middle of like everything. So I'm standing there trying to do the show, and just one point, a dinosaur just walks past. And so the kid's like, oh, look at that. I'm just like, okay, so now there's a dinosaur in my show. All right. So then that happened. And then 5 minutes later, some stormtroopers came and just sat right near the stage. I'm like, all right. And then I had a kid volunteering on stage with me. And then Spider-Man, a guy dressed as Spider-Man, literally just walked up to the stage and started high-fiving the kid. And in any other circumstance, maybe like in a different show, an actor might have a meltdown about that or stop the show or something. Whereas in the Mr. Snotbottom world, it's just like, here's another element of chaos. Like it's sort of the gig felt like an episode of Hey Hey It's Saturday. You know what I mean? Where just people are interrupting each other all the time. Do you know what I mean? It just so yeah. So I guess in answer to your questions, I really, really try hard not to break or do the grown-up voice, even when it's completely nuts. Like even even when some other bloke dressed as Spider-Man comes and just railroads your show, I still try and like, involve that person, like yes and it. And it's amazing how much just easier your time on stage can be with that sort of stuff if you kind of almost incorporate it into the world of the show and just sort of say yes and then move on. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And it's less tense and it's the crowd. It means you won't lose your crowd. You won't look like the bad guy. So yeah, that's how I kind of deal with it.
Oh yeah, when I go entertain at parties, the last thing that I want to see is pretty much anything else that's there that's designed to be entertaining besides me. When I show up
Yeah.
to a house and they've got like a not like a like a bouncy castle or there's like inflatable slide things. I'm like, okay, great. Now I have to compete with that now. Or they've already got like a pinata set up. I'm like, okay, I have to sort of grab people. I have to be more entertaining than these things, which can get a little frustrating to herd everyone to me and try and convince them that I'm better. I'm better than the bouncy castle or the candy in the paper mache pig.
So I had a weird situation where I was able to compete with Santa Claus. Like
Hmm.
I was able to keep my own with Santa Claus. I was pretty happy with that.
That's more impressive than competing with the dinosaur because Santa Claus is Santa Claus.
Yeah, you know what? I think these days there's like a Santa Claus at every single thing you see now. Do you
Mhm.
know what I mean? Like at Christmas time, a kid's gonna see Santa Claus like potentially 3 or 4 times a day.
Yeah.
He's like
Mm.
at every single event now. Whereas I don't know, like when you were a kid, but when I was a kid, you might see Santa Claus 3 times max
Hmm.
over that Christmas period.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's only at really, really special places, but now he's at like he's in front of a chemist. Do you know what I mean? He's like
Mhm.
there's some bloke's fate, like just
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, most of the time when I was a kid, I saw Santa's empty chair with a sign saying like, "We'll be back in 30 minutes. Just have to feed the reindeer or something." I was Santa Claus once in June, and I just made a
Oh,
joke about Santa Claus losing like a whole lot of weight just before Christmas time or something. But it's fine. The parents knew I wasn't Santa Claus. The kids, for the most part, know that you aren't actually that actual character. So it all
yeah.
it all evens out. I actually, in my research of you, I found a old program for like an old comedy fringe festival years and years ago. Um, and I was overwhelmed with nostalgia because I saw all of these names that you just don't really see nowadays. There was Corinne Grant, who I used to watch all the time on Rove Live, and she doesn't do performing anymore. She's now a lawyer because why not?
Yeah.
And there was Greg Fleet, who I think is retired now. So in your uh, stand-up comedy, at least experience being at fringe festivals, how have things changed? How are things different now compared to back in the early 2000s days?
Well, I mean, there's so much bigger, I feel like in my first like Adelaide Fringe, I think there was like 300 other shows, and now it's like up in the thousand, mark. And like even with the kids stuff, like there was only maybe a page, like it didn't even have its own segment, it didn't have its own category because there just wasn't that many kids shows, so you just were fit into either theatre or music or comedy. And I remember like you just didn't have to do anything. You just did the show and you were selling out like a 300 seater space, like without barely doing anything. And now, like, I've reduced the house to like 80 and I'm still marketing, like it just, yeah, it's a lot. I think what tends to happen is, like more and more people get on and then there's less audience to go around, less resources, less places to put your poster up. So yeah, I mean it's good in one way in that it forces you to be more better skilled and more competitive, and you meet a lot more people. There's more people involved and a lot more people to learn from, stuff like that. Um, I guess the downside is that then it sort of it makes it harder to exist as a functioning financial artist. Like it's sort of yeah. But it's just I think about trying to evolve with it and so even with Perth, like I remember I remember being in Adelaide Fringe and these two guys telling me about the first Fringe World, and they were going, it is amazing. They're like, it's like the gold rush, like it's this new initiative that all the public are hungry for it. And like if you give out a flyer, that person's gonna come. It's almost got like 100% flyer rate. He's like saying it's the best experience they had had at a festival. And then it was really like that for about like maybe 5 or 6 years. And it's kind of like the other festivals had sort of slow diminishing returns. As more and more people get involved, So I guess that's what sort of happened is that these festivals are just exploded and just but and the people that are sort of, like benefiting from it the most from an audience perspective are these larger budget shows that with some of them have like $30,000 marketing budgets, and if you're an independent, you can't really compete with that, and it's that sort of thing. Well, A, do I play the game? Do I find out a way to have a $30,000 marketing budget and compete with that? But what if that's not what I want to do? What if I don't want to be a marketing guy? Like, what if I don't want to be a people manager? So then you kind of then got to go the other way, It's almost like that's what I'm learning right now. It's just like I can't compete with some of these production houses that come in with maybe 3 or 4 different shows, like and I guess then they spread their budget over those 4 different shows. So and they're filling out these massive venues that are kind of been getting bigger as well. And I think that's the other thing is it's like we've got these huge, like 500,000 seater spaces now. So back when there might have been like 300, 400 seats tops, those shows would sell out and then you get that flow on and people would go and see other shows. But because they're not selling out, these big, 500,000 seaters are just kind of just gobbling more and more up of the crowd. So I guess yeah, my approach this year is like, okay, I just have to try and take my show to the out of the city or out of the hubs. You know what I mean? Like, rather than try and compete with all the bigger shows that are in the hubs, uh, because I don't want to be a mass marketing machine. I just don't want to spend my time doing that and looking at Facebook algorithms or whatever. I don't want to spend my time doing that. I will go, I'm going back the other way, and doing smaller theaters in local areas. And it's kind of worked so far. Like last Perth Fringe, I went to South Perth and just spent one weekend at the Old Mill Theatre. And it was great, like really good. Like I think it was a 100 seater and it sold really well, like without having to do much. Because I just did a sensible amount of shows, in like yeah, a smaller space and it just kind of worked itself out. And I was, yeah, really happy with that result. And so that's what I'm sort of looking at this year as well, like doing, yeah, small spaces and taking the shows to outer suburbs so rather than kind of because I think that's getting hard for people. That's the feedback I'm getting with festivals these days is that there's so many more costs involved, like parking's gone up. For a lot of people, the expense of food has gone up. Like, they go to these hubs and now they have to spend like $30 like on a hamburger, and have to feed all their kids. And so I'm getting feedback from families telling me when I was offering them free tickets, I was offering them free tickets to a show, and they were like, "We can't afford it. We can't afford your free show because we have to pay for food and for parking, and I want to go on a ride. They want fairy floss." And it's like, okay. So that was my thought. I was like, well, I'll take the show to them. So yeah, so a lot of so yeah, moving forward, like for Adelaide Fringe, I'll be going to um, an LGA like about 20 minutes out of the city, and that have as a high percentage of families. And so see if it works. It might be the worst mistake I've ever made, but I think it'll be good. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm always repelled by the fringe shows, as an example, that are like big spectacle, big marketing, clearly expensive kind of things like circus things, cabaret stuff, like things where it's just people singing. I always go for like paradoxically, I'm always more attracted to the shows that have the least amount of marketing because it's usually like a small personal theater kind of show. Some of the best shows that I've ever seen, just generally, I was one of maybe at most 10 people in the audience, and it was just such a fun, intimate experience. Whenever someone hands me a flyer, I am convinced to not go see their show. It like does the opposite of what it should be doing. I'm like, oh, okay, you can afford to. I flyed once and I hated it. I didn't like handing out stuff saying, "Hey, please go see my show." So I just let people come to me if they are interested in the concept of the show. But yeah, I wish you the best in the sort of smaller, more intimate theaters. I mean, like a 50 to 100 seater, that's just so perfect because it's big enough to have like a big audience, but it's not so massive that the reactions are just like this sheep herd hive mind generic kind of reaction to what you're doing.
Yeah, totally. And there's definitely like I reckon there's definitely a place for these sort of big budget shows because it's sort of they bring people in, make it the whole thing exciting. Um, and especially in some of the people involved in these, particularly if they're sort of high-end circus, some of them are like internationally renowned performers, and it's some of them are amazing. And I guess like caps would help. Do you know what I mean? Like I think
Hmm.
if there was only maybe a handful of them, that would be easier to, I think, work alongside with. But when it's sort of like, so much of the program, then I think it makes it all a bit unmanageable. Yeah.
Hmm.
But Yeah, it's flying is definitely there's ways to enjoy it. Like there's ways to sort of make that an extension of the performance. Like I saw there's this great performer, Dr. Brown, who's this just pure clown. I know, have you ever seen, did you see Phil Berger's Dr. Brown?
It sounds familiar, but nothing's really coming to mind.
So he like won best show in Edinburgh and best show in Melbourne in the same year. But he came to Adelaide with like zero material. So he started his fringe run with like nothing, like absolutely zero material, and then just built it and just based it on what was working. And then yeah, by the end of it, he's got like the best show at the Melbourne Comedy Festival. But his flying technique was just amazing. Like he would just sort of like he'd ride a bike into a wall and just fall. And then someone would come and go, "Oh, you okay?" And goes, "Yeah, just come to my show," and just give them a flyer. Or he'd walk around just going, "Anyone want $5? You want $5?" And it'd literally be trying to just give someone $5. And then if they took it, he'd give them a flyer as well. Yeah. So there's definitely an art to it, and people are so good at it. But yeah, I've found ways to really enjoy it and really like just riff with people. It's almost like roving. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
But then I'd get exhausted. You know what I mean? I'd have no gas left for the performance because I just spent 2 hours like giving 100% energy to flyering. And sometimes the flyering would be funnier than my show because I just had like no gas left.
I saw this post a little while ago on social media that somebody was criticizing people that make cartoons because cartoons are for kids. And someone
Oh.
responded by saying that the the cartoons for kids are made by adults, and they made the analogy where it's like, do you think that when you go when you see a playground at a school or just like at a park, do you think that the playground was made by like very engineering savvy 8-year-olds that wanted to have a playground? So to those people, what do you say to those people who might criticize you by saying that you are strange because you make content for kids and you aren't a kid?
Um, well, I guess it's like most kids show, well, like cartoons and things like that in the old days weren't for kids, like the original Warner Brothers and even, early Mickey Mouse cartoons weren't made for kids, are made for a general audience. And there's a difference between maybe making content for kids and making content for, say, a general audience. And I guess I've always been more um, a general audience performer, I'd say, so it's kind of unsatisfying for me if the adults aren't enjoying it as well.
Hmm.
Um, to the point where I get them, like kids and adults, to be sitting together. Like I want the parents and their kids sitting together to share the experience and enjoy it together, because it definitely, the show just doesn't quite work as well. Because I wouldn't say that there's jokes that are targeted to the adults that are going to go up the kids' heads. Like I try and avoid that because I want to undermine, the kids. But it's more of a case that it literally, some of the material is maybe about the relationship between the parent and the kid. So if they're not sitting together, it doesn't work as well. Similarly, like quite often I'll do like well, actually not quite often, but sometimes, yeah, I will have to do like an Osh care group. I might be in a theatre and they'll book the school holidays out with these Osh care groups, and the show is always a different dynamic. It's not something as I enjoy as much. And it took me a while to even get the show to work for just a bunch of kids. Um, and now it does, but still, it's not my favorite, uh, you know, type of show. But I guess even, more further in response to that comment, I'd say like that, at the heart, like we're all the same, like um, what entertains us all is so pure and honest and primal, So it's sort of like if it can't entertain a kid, then it's not going to entertain anyone. Do you know what I mean? So it's like especially if you look at someone like Mr. Bean, like that's just so universal. And that's kind of personally what I try and aim to emulate in terms of, accessibility and relatability, because everyone of all cultures adores Mr. Bean and
Mm.
enjoys watching him. But I have had, yeah, comments that might be sort of, like I have literally, yeah, had comments on videos and things like that from people that might be suggesting I have, not good motives, for, you can read between the lines there, for working with kids and why I might want to do that as a grown man. And I would say that, like kids need mentors and, what kind of world would we be without like, males in mentor roles such as doctors or footy coaches or anywhere where a child needs a role model. And to sort of, I think, disassociate men from that is a huge mistake. They need to see healthy males in their lives. And if that role model is a man being silly or just showing artistic expression, then like I think that's positive as well.
Sort of on that topic, as someone who makes content for children, I would like your opinion on the somewhat recent social media ban that's been happening in Australia. Several weeks ago, I was on YouTube, and for the first time ever, I saw text at the top of the web page that said something to the effect of, to get a YouTube account, you have to prove that you are over the age of 16. And just reading that, it sort of struck me right in the core of my heart, because I had a YouTube channel when I was about 15, and I have it now. I'm going to put this on that YouTube channel. So it struck a bit close to home. If I hadn't made that YouTube channel and kept going with it when I was a teenager, maybe you and I would not be talking right now. So from your perspective, as someone who entertains and makes content for children, how do you think this under 16 social media ban will affect under 16 people in Australia?
Oh man, it's like yeah, it's 50-50. Like I'm not sure if I have a passionate stance either way. Like I think, particularly if you're making content for children, like their parents are going to be able to show them. Do you know what I mean? Like any parent with their account um, is going to be able to set up the iPad for the kid and watch the show that they want to watch. Like it's almost, but I see what you're saying in terms of kids who might want to make content and I mean like this there must be some sort of middle ground or some way that they can still simulate, like I guess when I was a kid without having social media at all, I guess I would be watching maybe a TV show or a movie and I would still simulate making one, or there was still a way to like, pretend you were making a TV show, even within your school or whatever, your media studies class, without necessarily that being broadcasted. You know what I mean? So, I mean, obviously there is some kind of social media epidemic. Like there's obviously a problem. It is a problem for adults as much as teenagers, and I think there is wisdom in safeguarding kids from that, and because we are seeing mental health crisis as well, like which social media has been somewhat blamed for. And like I don't know, it seems like a bit of a no-brainer that, yeah, it's causing some developmental issues in people and mental health issues in people in terms of, segregating and these horrible echo chambers and tribalism it creates. I'm not sure. It's I think it was amazing at one point. Like I think the beginnings of social media was just incredible. And now, yeah, it's dog shit. It's when it's at its best, it's amazing, but I think at its worst, it's become quite horrible, and to the point where I think I even like kind of just I've turned off it. Like I don't use it as much as I used to because I am like the algorithms haven't quite got me, I don't think, because I kind of look at it and I go, "Ugh, I don't want to see that." And then I just put it away within like 3 minutes. So my attention on social media is very low because it's just not, because it used to connect me with people. I felt like I'd see my friends and families' content and I felt it was an extension of quality communication. And now it's just what it's showing me is divisiveness and doom scrolling. It's just, and yeah, I just turn off that. So I think to keep, the BS of social media away from kids is kind of a good thing. But yeah, I see what you're saying where, like the kids at the moment have developed a reliance on it in terms of how they might relate. Particularly maybe special needs kids who are using it to communicate in a way they were never able to before. And it is going to go the other way with some kids. Some kids will have, I think, experience increased loneliness and decreased connection because of it. Um, then what do we do? Do we just kind of wait for that tide to turn, or like I don't know. I don't think there's a clean answer to it. Um, my instant reaction was like, "Oh, thank God they're doing that." That was actually my instant reaction. Um, while still sort of aware that, yeah, obviously there's some complications there. But I think it's, yeah, it's going to be wobbly. Like it's definitely going to be wobbly, and we'll probably see some sort of, like treading back. And I think that's a good thing, once we figure out how to navigate it. But yeah, some kind of, I don't know, like there's part of me that just wants to see all of social media crash and burn. We just want us to move to something else because what we're seeing is, yeah, it's owned by corporations or billionaires who all have their, they all have their ulterior motives with it. So it's just not a healthy place for humans to be using right now. I don't know. What's your take on it?
Well, I think that what makes what you do so important is I'd say 50% of why live entertainment and specifically live entertainment for children that in other circumstances might just be at home on their iPads all day is that it gets them out of the house into a room surrounded by other people and they're in a situation where
Yeah.
hopefully they're not taking out their devices. Like I love going to the movie theater now more than I did in any year before because you sit in a chair, you switch off your
I,
phone, or you should switch off your phone, and you trap yourself into a moment where you can't be distracted by other things. So it's good that you get kids and other people in a room to sit still and just focus on one thing and not get distracted by a thousand other things. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest dangers of just the internet in general is that it breaks up your attention just so easily. Like doom scrolling, you said, it's like one of the worst things that you can do. It's just a complete. I do it often sometimes, like hours of my day can just, not hours, an hour of my day can just disappear when I'm just like scrolling, looking at nothing. And then as soon as I finish, I just forget what I just saw. But with you get people into a room to just focus, and that's good.
yeah, well, it's sort of just, I don't know. I think I'm a bit more tactile or something because the amount of, oh God, like it feels like once a week someone's like, "Hey, have you thought about doing this on social media?" And I was just like, and every time I'm just like, the idea of it just kind of makes me sick. Like I don't want to just sit in front of my phone to make stuff that's generally like just this word content, the idea of
Oh yeah.
making content. I
Hmm.
don't want to make forgettable stuff that that I just shit out. You know what I mean? I kind of want to put effort and thought and nuance, and I want to create craft. I don't want to just vomit stuff out and go, it's on the internet now, and like have people kind of half engage in it. Like I don't want to be someone's distraction. I want to
Mhm.
be someone's choice. Like so. Yeah, like I would much rather be some weirdo carny
Mhm.
that I am than be a social media, I don't know, whatever, for whatever word, social media, like influencer type of
Mhm.
thing. It
Yeah.
just, I mean, and people love it. Oh, clearly, there's a market bit for it. Like clearly, I'm over the hill with it, and people love it. So each to their own, I
I'm
suppose.
not sure. I'm not sure if people love it or there's a market for it. I think it just people make a certain kind of content that has a certain title and a certain thumbnail that hits an algorithm and it just sort of falls into the stream of content that people are watching anyway. Like as they doom scroll, it just shows up more often.
Yeah, right. It's just there. Like
Yeah.
yeah. What's that thing like now that they're making like choices with making shows on streaming services and stuff to mitigate that? So they're like, have you heard about this? That they're now dumbing down shows so that
Go
people
on.
can
Yeah.
look at another screen at the same time.
Oh
Like
yeah,
I
sure.
just find
Yeah. Yeah.
that,
I've heard that the uh people behind the scenes are telling writers or people when they're on the set that they have to make the dialogue more obvious so that people know what's going on while they're on their phone at the same time. Something like that.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. Oh, there's a name for it. I think it's like second screening or something like
Sure.
that.
Yeah,
But
yeah, so
it's
yeah. Yeah, probably.
yeah,
Something like that. Hmm.
yeah, like that just it saddens me so much.
Hmm.
Like I was watching The Lion King last week, like the original Lion King, and I was just like, this is perfect. I was like, I thought I was going to be bored because I saw it so many times, when it came out, and in my like, I've probably seen it about 8 or 9 times, and it's like, I'll probably be a bit disengaged. I was just like, no, this is like such a great piece of filmmaking. Like it's just the script is so tight and just so much show don't tell in it, like and just it's just kicks along so perfectly and the characters are so good. And I was just like, man, these kind of overblown scripts and over explained scripts now are just so sad. I'm sounding like such an old man. Oh my gosh.
No, hey,
I don't,
if I had kids, I would show them like the first decade of Pixar movies just on like a constant loop. I
yeah.
wouldn't show them anything new. Just like Monsters Inc., Toy Story, Ratatouille, Toy Story 2, Cars, I guess, and just play that over and over again, and they'll be fine.
Totally, totally. Yeah, not everything has to be like 3 hours. To me, like when I can see a 3 hour movie, a lot of the times it's just like, oh, this is like hearing my mum tell a story. Do you know what I mean? It's just
Mhm.
like, rather than just getting to the point, it's like, oh, so there's this guy, then he went to the shops first and then he met this person, but this isn't the story yet. It just sort of kicks along like that.
I think, especially for theater shows, like big, long, expensive musicals, they have to be long to justify the audience leaving their house to go and see it. Like I've seen
Sure. Yeah.
production companies try and make a theater show that was like a series of shorter theater plays that went for like 5 minutes each, and you'd watch like 10 over the course of like half an hour or whatever. And they don't do very well because I don't think people really want to go out to see to
Yeah.
like pick at things. They want to get one big meal. So they go and see like a three and
Yeah.
a half hour musical because it's viewed as being more worth it.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think a live event is different for sure, especially it's why it's like a lot of people going to these bigger festivals now almost rather than spending money on smaller events. I'd rather do like
Mm.
a whole 9 hour event with lots of stuff going on. That's understandable. Yeah.
From what I've seen in my experience, kids entertainers usually leave the job quite quickly, if only because they're viewing it as a stepping stone to something else or to something else, or they burn out too quickly because they, as I say, clown it up a bit too intensely, and then they just get tired and then leave. I was once told to be a clown for I was told to be a clown and go to a call center and make balloons for the call center people. And after talking to some of them, all of them said that out of the 30 people that were in the room, one out of the 30 had been there for over a year, whereas everyone else had been there for a couple months. And from their experience and from the manager's experience, everyone is there for a couple months and then they just get too frustrated and then they leave. So, do you have any idea why kids entertainers, call center workers, and maybe other kinds of jobs that have a faster turnaround have such a fast turnaround? Like, why do people leave so quickly?
Yeah, wow. I mean, market research, I hated it and I couldn't wait to get out of there. I mean, those are those sorts of jobs where I don't know, maybe people don't know what it's going to entail. Maybe that's it. And they realize they hate it pretty quickly. Maybe they, especially because, like the worst part of kids, they can be feral, demanding, rude, but no barriers. Like there's certainly some horrible experiences you can have with children. It's like I don't know, I couldn't be a facilitator. Do you know what I mean? I don't think I could be um, an OSH care worker or something like that because I think actually having to rationalize with kids all day is, I think that's pretty tough. And my hat goes off to anyone who does that. So that's possibly why people, yeah, just don't know necessarily what they're getting themselves into. Because I certainly wasn't built to be in a call center. I just found it, oh, so frustrating, so boring. That I would be naughty. Like I was never, I never misbehaved at school, but yet I misbehaved at this call center because I was so frustrated and so just hated the work so much that I would just like dance around in my chair, but like while on a call or just hide under people's desks. And when they would come back, I'd just like jump up like in between their legs and stuff like that. Like to the point where a couple of times I was just sent home for being too distracting. Like I felt like I was literally a child working in this place. So I think we just all have different temperaments, and some jobs have very specific, specific temperaments.
This next question, I normally would put at the start of this whole interview because it's about the first time that I saw you, was introduced to you, but it will be revealed soon why I've left it to the end. So I first saw your Snotbottom character all the way back in 2018 during the Perth Fringe Festival. The Perth comedian Sunny Yang was made a comedy show where he would snarkily review, without watching the shows, review the shows that were around at Fringe and make jokes and stuff. And he got to, like, halfway through the set, he got to your Snotbottom character and he played a clip where you had like a bunch of jars and you were like, this is a dog's fart, and you would open it and it would play a fart sound. This is this fart, this is grandma's fart. It would make a fart. So like the speakers would play a fart sound. And then Sunny Yang in his chair in front of the projector picked up a jar and said, I've got something disgusting in this jar right now. And he opened the jar, aimed it at the projector, and a clip on the projector played of someone on the street filming like his friends having a conversation. And then the camera panned up and it was one of the twin towers with smoke pluming out of it, as in that's the joke, it's a disgusting thing in a jar. So my question for you is,
Yeah.
thoughts?
Wow. Well, I'm glad I was someone else's me.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Well, I guess, yeah, I mean, it's like, uh, I suppose a fart joke is like it is sort of like the most disgusting, reviled sort of thing the body does, and then made into comedy, and so I guess the whole sort of, Mr. Snotbottom thing is that, like it, finding out how to actually make a fart be funny still repeatedly when it stops being surprising, you know what I mean? So I guess he's yeah, I guess it sounds like was a solid joke.
Yeah,
his joke go down well?
it got laughs, it got
Yeah.
groans, and yeah, it worked fine. I think it got the sort
Well,
of
yeah.
like oh kind of response that he was hoping for.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it sounded like he took the piece of the fart gallery and made it his own. Yeah, it I think he yeah, absolutely illustrated what that piece of material entails. And I guess I think the someone else, what did someone say to me that like you can almost be offensive as you want as long as it's funny.
Mhm.
And if it's funny, you can get away with it. But if it's not funny, then yeah, you're racist, homophobic, et cetera, et cetera. But you can get away with a lot as long as it's funny. As long as the crowd is still on your side, it's amazing what you can, yeah, get away with. But hey, yeah, hats off to Sonny Yang. Is
Yeah,
that
yeah,
what
Sonny
did we
Yang.
say his name was?
Yep.
Hats off to him.
Okay,
So
great.
was that his whole show? Just like
Yeah,
kind of,
yeah, he did it a few times in like the late in like 2018, 2019. He would sit on a chair and he would have like the catalog of fringe shows and he would play like show the posters for it and just say this is a show about a man that goes here and does this and then he would make a joke about it and yeah that was like his hour-long show where he would sort of
yeah,
critique
wow.
in a comedic way other fringe. There really wasn't any other show like it, so it really I think
Yeah.
it did pretty well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I
a fun
mean,
idea.
yeah, no fringe show talks about the other fringe shows except that one. It was a pretty cool idea.
Yeah, especially like that doesn't involve the people that he's, yeah, it's almost like a magazine, like kind of, it's like Media Watch, but for fringe shows.
Mhm. All right. Well, that
Uh,
brings me to the last question. That is always the last question that I ask on this thing that I do, and that is, of course, why are stories important?
yeah, wow. I mean, they're important because I guess they far out. Like this is like a 1 hour discussion in itself, isn't it? Really, like I mean, I suppose they show a mirror up to us. They're our way of communicating, remembering, and also passing on ideas and they're a way of helping people to sort of relate to worlds they may not be aware of, or like help us learn about society and other people and empathize with people that we may not necessarily agree with or understand. So I think in terms of bringing the world closer together and bringing people closer together, it's essential. Because I guess we all have stories, and we have stories that we tell ourselves about other people, about ourselves, about the world. And so the more that we share stories and the more we hear stories, the more likely we are to sort of understand each other, as opposed to just sharing opinions or just having hot takes. A story is a lot more accessible and understandable, particularly, if you can see yourself in elements of a character or, even just elements of a story or a situation. It's always an easier in than say hearing someone's opinion or any other kind of divisive sort of communication. So, I think we should, the more storytellers there are, the better.
All right. One wonderfully said. Mark Trenwith, thank you so much for coming on to One Story Building.
Thank you very much. Oh, thanks so much for having me. That was great. That was a joy.